Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore the incredibly fascinating, sensory-rich history of exactly how village families survived freezing winter nights. Just imagine stepping outside in the kind of biting cold that makes your nose feel like it's literally about to fall off. The absolute luxury of central heating, completely non-existent. Tonight, we're stepping into a historical village home where staying warm isn't just about comfort, it is a full-time job. So let's dive right into this. How exactly did you survive the night before central heating? Try to imagine a world where warmth is not just a dial on the wall or, a button you tap on an app. Instead, it's a deliberate, active skill that you have to meticulously practice every single day. And the reality was, if you didn't practice it, you simply didn't stay warm. And this stark contrast right here is basically the main theme we're looking at today. Today, you and I are passive consumers of heat, right? But historically, warmth required an incredibly active, deliberate ecosystem. It was this intense collaborative effort of daily discipline. And as you're going to see, every single object and person in the house played a crucial role in this survival strategy. Okay, so here is our winter survival playbook for this explainer. We're going to cover 1. Shrinking the winter world, 2. Mastering the open hearth, 3. Portable heat and stones, 4. Building the bed fortress, and 5. The immense power of body heat. All right, let's start with part 1, shrinking the winter world. Basically, living in a much smaller world for the night. So village families intentionally compressed their daily lives into the warmest zones of the house. They treated any unused space almost like a giant refrigerator. You just didn't go in there. To physically shrink the house, they'd hang really heavy textiles as room dividers just to stop the air from flowing. They even treated their furniture like architecture, dragging these massive, heavy chests across the room to act as draft windbreaks. And they were constantly plugging those hissing wall gaps with moss, clay, or even just old rags. The ultimate goal here was to stop the cold right at the border. But they didn't just worry about the walls. The ground is a patient thief of heat. It will pull the warmth right out of you. To fight this, they used thick floor coverings. They layered crunching rushes, straw, or animal hides right over the bare earth or stone. Now, this wasn't for interior decoration, right? These materials created thousands of tiny, trapped air pockets, effectively acting as this amazing insulating barrier that stopped the creeping cold right at their feet. Moving on to part 2, mastering the open hearth, the absolute daily discipline of the fire. To prevent precious, hard-earned heat from just escaping straight up a drafty chimney or a smoke hole, families performed this fascinating nightly ritual called banking the fire. First, you rake the embers inward really tightly. Next, you add a dense, slow-burning piece of hardwood on top. And finally, you cover the whole thing with a thick, insulating layer of ash. Now, it looks like you're burying the fire, but you're actually preserving this hidden, breathing glow that's going to survive until the morning. So the crucial takeaway here is that this was not about a roaring, dramatic, picture-perfect blaze. Open fires consume way too much fuel, and honestly, they're dangerous. Instead, this was a narrow, smoky compromise. Warmth was highly concentrated, carefully guarded, and strictly rationed. The night was basically treated like a relentless opponent, one you can outsmart, sure, but never fully defeat. Which brings us to part 3, portable heat and stones. Literally carrying the heat with you. To take that warmth away from the hearth, someone would carefully select a dense stone. Crucially, they had to pick one that wouldn't explode when heated. They'd warm it up super slowly near the fire and then wrap it securely in multiple layers of cloth. The physics here is pretty simple. A dense object soaks up warmth and then slowly releases it at your feet when you're in bed. It acted like a portable, personal sun. No chargers, no smart apps, just straight up physics. Now, in wealthier households, you might find the famous warming pan. This was a long-handled metal pan that you'd fill with hot coals and then slide it briefly between the sheets to take away the icy shock of a cold mattress. It absolutely delivered incredible comfort, but, it did come with the slight, thrilling threat of setting your entire inheritance on fire if you weren't extremely careful. Okay, let's look at part 4, building the bed fortress, using the bed as an actual heat trap. These beds were placed super strategically in interior corners as far away from drafts as possible. They were raised right off the cold floor, enclosed entirely by heavy wool or linen curtains to block any air movement, and then layered with a stuffed straw underlayer and incredibly heavy wool blankets. Those heavy textiles physically press down on you, completely blocking cold air from entering and holding your body heat super close. It basically created a private little microclimate inside the much colder room. The historical sources paint such a vivid picture of this enclosed space. It really was like the ancient ancestor of a modern sleeping bag. As this humorous summary perfectly puts it, they effectively utilized timber and heavy cloth to shrink the breathable air to its absolute minimum. They basically built a wooden burrito and just moved in. And finally, part 5, the power of body heat, the absolute oldest heating technology we have. So you definitely didn't dramatically throw off your clothes for bed like you see in a modern mattress commercial. No, you donned specific sleep armor. You wore tight nightcaps because a damp scalp loses heat incredibly fast. You wore thick wool socks to satisfy complaining toes, and you absolutely changed into dry linen shirts to leave the day's sweat and damp chill behind. You dressed this way because your own body was essentially the home's primary furnace, and you had to trap that heat at all costs. We modern people often view having a private solo mattress as a huge part of our identity and comfort. But historically, empty space in a bed was a literal crime against warmth. Solo sleeping meant cold pockets and terribly wasted surface area. Instead, families piled together to share heat through sheer thermodynamics. Children, siblings, sometimes even passing travelers clustered together, turning the bed into a collective living radiator. And when human bodies just weren't quite enough to fight off those freezing temperatures, livestock provided a massive thermal boost. Think about it. The original space heater wasn't a shiny gadget. It was a sheep. And hey, it came with free lint. By keeping animals in attached stables or directly on the lower floors below the human living space, it allowed their constant, low-level radiant body heat to naturally rise. And yes, it absolutely smelled heavily of hay, damp wool, and manure, but village families gladly accepted that sensory cost of sleeping right next to cows and goats, simply because it was the ultimate living space heater that literally kept them alive. So how did this whole layered defense work together? Well, the hearth provided that core ambient heat. Wrapped stones gave targeted portable comfort. Communal beds offered collective renewable warmth, and livestock gave a constant radiant boost. Warmth wasn't produced in one single heroic act. It was carefully conserved through dozens of interconnected daily microchoices. These ancestors survived because they transformed their entire ecosystem into an incredibly collaborative effort. Warmth was a set of deep habits built over generations, totally changing what warm enough even meant. They outsmarted the cold, not with some advanced technology, but with relentless communal adaptation. Which really leaves you wondering, if warmth is something we used to actively build together, side by side with our families, what exactly have we lost by turning it into a passive button press? As we sit back and enjoy the perfect, isolated climate control of our modern thermostats, have we perhaps sacrificed the deep communal connection that once kept us alive in the dark? Definitely something to think about tonight as you drift off to sleep. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.